Good morning, guys. This is Ramses from King Ramses channel, and today I'm going to be talking about in another video the continuation to the topic of Muhammad and the Jews and why Muhammad discriminated against the Jews, and I'm going to follow through with a lot of the reasons that I've mentioned before. Um, about Muhammad's relationship with the Jews and his call to Islam or to his ideology in the beginning, and how he was inspired in a way or actually copied a lot of the Jewish traditions into Islam and into his religion, and how he hoped in the beginning to draw aid or support from the Jewish tribes of Arabia, and which was not met by an approval from the leaders of these Jewish tribes, as they basically refused to follow Muhammad's new ideology, and they chose to stick with their own um, Jewish ideology, and they also, basically gave him the message that they are peaceful and they don't want war with him or with his people of Quraysh, which Muhammad was at war, um, with back at that time. So in the beginning, he was trying to gain their support financially and ideologically against his people, which is a war or a conflict that the Jewish tribes did not want to take part in, as they feared for their own safety if one of the parties won or lost, as far as the consequences of what's going to happen to them in the aftermath of this war. Because if they supported Muhammad, then they have to fear, the revenge from Quraysh, or if they supported Quraysh, then they have to fear revenge from Muhammad in case he wins. So they did not want to take part in this war. So they basically stayed away, and they had communication as usual in politics with the different parties and all the parties involved, so they can make sure that they're not isolated, or they're not subjected to things, or different types of politics that they're not aware of. Basically, this was the main overview of the relationship in the beginning between Muhammad and the Jewish tribes of Arabia. Then, when Muhammad, started pressuring them into supporting him, and he did not gain or receive, their approval of supporting him financially and ideologically, as they chose to stick to their own ideology. Basically, he started to go at war or go to war with these tribes in hopes that he would take all their money and take all their land. Now, like I said in the last video, after the last battle of the trenches in Medina, the Jewish tribes of Medina, basically Banu Qurayza, which we talked about in the last video, they had communications at that time, at that war, with all the parties involved, which is normal at the time of war. Now Muhammad saw this act as an act of betrayal. He saw that they betrayed him, which is not, if you analyze the situation from an objective point of view, it was not true, because you have to have your communications open with all the parties involved. Just because you're talking to the Russians does not mean that you are betraying the US. Just because you're talking to the US does not mean that you're betraying the Russians. They had to make sure that their communication is open with all the parties involved, so they can ensure that they're not left out, and so they can ensure that they're not suffering the consequences of cutting the communication between them and some of the parties involved. because they have no idea what's going to happen in the future. So they're trying to just protect themselves politically by having open channels of communication between them and all the parties involved. Now, Muhammad, he saw that as an act of betrayal, or he actually just was looking for any reason so he can destroy these tribes and take all their money. And in that case, like we said in the last video, he actually killed everybody in all the men of this tribe. He actually beheaded a number of 600 to 900 people, human beings, at that time, which was like one of the most outrageous, acts of war at that period, to kill a whole tribe of people at one time. And this was when the beginning of a series of actions that he started that started taking place from Muhammad against the Jewish tribes of Arabia. And this basically started a wave of immigration, of like a discrimination against all the Jews of Arabia, and they had to finally get out of Arabia, which is why right now there's barely any Jews left in Arabia. Maybe just some in Yemen in the past 100 years, but just really like minimal numbers, people that, in places where they are completely cut from civilization and they were not able to get out at all. This was basically the overview. We talked in specific about Banu Qurayza, one of the nearest tribes to Muhammad, which he killed all of its men, and then he took the women and the kids hostage, and then he followed through with attacking the rest of the Jewish tribes in order till there was no Jews left in Arabia. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the rest of the tribes of Banu Qaynuqa and Banu Nadir, which is the rest of the tribes, Jewish tribes in Arabia. I don't want to detail what exactly happened to them and the circumstances that existed, and basically what exactly happened between them and Muhammad and his companions or his people in the next video. I hope you guys like this video. I'm gonna see you in the next one.